I have another video filled with copies of expensive home decor for a whole lot less. I'll have bookmarks to each of the tutorials and other helpful links and printables in the description box below. Now let's get crafting on the first high-end dupe. This mother of pearl inlay tray is beautiful. I love the pattern and it's really elegant looking. But I know we can make something very similar for much cheaper. So we'll get started with this brownie pan from Dollar Tree, and it's a really nice size for our decorative tray. I gave it a coat of flat white spray paint, and then I measured the bottom of the pan so I would know exactly what size to make the printable for the inlay. I started by making a similar design in Adobe Illustrator. Since we're not using actual mother of pearl to save money, just recreating the look, we'll be doing a few things that give it that shimmery look. The first way to do that is by giving this design a yellow gradient in the background. It's just a really subtle gradient that I'm adding. After trimming this out and using some Super 77 spray mount to secure it to the inside of the pan, I'm going to use this light gray pen to add just a little dimension around the edges of the white design so it doesn't look so flat. This doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just adding a few lines here and there. And this pen actually happens to be erasable, so you can use the eraser if you mess something up or it doesn't look just the way you want it. Dollar Tree does sell spray mount in their craft section, but I got my Super 77 on Amazon and it's my favorite spray to stick down things like paper and not get wrinkles on it. I found this pearlescent paint and was hoping it would be somewhat transparent, and it was. It is really pretty and it's kind of hard to tell on camera, but it really gives just the right amount of sheen to our tray to have that mother of pearl look. Oh, and if there is a certain home decor store that you like and you want to see me make copies of their items, then make sure to leave me a comment below. I really love sharing crafts and home DIYs, so you can get lots of ideas to find your inner artist. So please consider subscribing if you like the sound of that and you like home decor inspiration, and then that way you can be part of this uplifting and creative community here on Artsy Cupcake. Here were the supplies we had to pick up for this project. And here is mine compared to the Anthropologie version. This trinket dish is so cute for holding jewelry. This was originally $14, but the version we are going to be making will be much larger. I'm going to upcycle this cupcake dish that I had made from a Dollar Tree plate and a Dollar Tree margarita glass. I had just glued everything together with E6000 and adorned it with some beaded stickers on the edge. Even though the inspiration one doesn't have that beaded edge detail, I like it, so I'm going to leave those beads right on there. I rolled some air clay into long strips of various widths. I placed them on top of the tray so that I knew I was getting them in the right position and the right size. This is a very abstract looking flower, and we aren't going for a photographic look with all the details, so have fun with this part and sculpt away with whatever shapes your hand makes. I love working with clay. It's really soothing and it makes you feel like a kid getting your hands all dirty. After the clay dried for a day, I used E6000 to attach the pieces to the top of the tray. After the glue dried, I gave everything a coat of flat white spray paint. Then I watered down some light blue acrylic paint, and I used this paint wash all over our jewelry tray. I let the paint build up in some areas because the one from Anthropologie is very organic, not only in the way that the sculpture is done, but also in the way that the paint was applied. So it's all right if you have some light and some dark areas. Here were the supplies we needed for this dupe, and we made ours for half the cost of Anthropologie, and it's twice the size too. I think this will look so pretty on my vanity counter. These pots are gorgeous. I love the simple color schemes on them. I had a subscriber make a request to see how I would recreate the flowers on Anthropologie's home decor items. Thank you so much for that suggestion. My technique is similar to what you've been doing, Carla, so let me show you. I didn't have any pots on hand that were the same size as the Anthropologie versions, so I'm going to use this little planter that I recently found at Dollar Tree. This twine is much thicker than the twine they normally sell at Dollar Tree, so I think it will come in handy for another project. So I'll keep that in my craft stash. I sanded off the glue on the top where that twine was. And then I pushed some air clay into this silicone rose mold. Once the clay starts to hold its shape, but it isn't 100% dry, you will want to take these out and form them to the curve of the pot that you are using. Then let them finish drying with that curve in them. Once they are dry, you can break off any rough edges and even sand the edges a bit to get them nice and smooth. I gave mine a coat of paint and then used E6000 to secure them to the pot. After the glue fully dries, you can finish up the design by hand painting some leaves in any of the empty spots. You could do a lacquer coat over this if you want to really secure everything in place. Here are the items we had to pick up for this project. And we saved $50 by making this ourselves. I really needed a key holder in our coat closet. This Keys Please sign was originally $17, but it happened to be on sale the day I took this screenshot. I went to a local thrift shop a while back and came across this for only $1.65, random price. Even the woman at the checkout was like, "That's a weird price we chose there." We will start by removing the hardware and filling in those holes so we have room at the top for our sign. A little wood filler and sanding, and then I will paint that hardware black and the wooden sign white. Black and white always makes for a nice clean farmhouse look, and I just love using black and white in my crafts. I measured to see how big the sign needed to be. If you don't have a Cricut or another cutting machine, then you can always use an inkjet printer for this type of project. I try to make the sign fit the entire space so the edge of the paper blends in closely with the edge of the item that we're gluing it on. I found a close match to the font that the Kirkland's version, and I even added a shadow effect. Then I trimmed this out. A quick coat of Super 77 and this paper is really stuck to the wood for good. I marked where I wanted to re-drill the holes, and then I added that hardware back on. This was so easy, and now this key holder has a new farmhouse look. Here were the supplies we had to pick up, and here is mine compared to the Kirkland's version. I actually like mine better. What do you guys think? You can't go wrong with a monogram piece of home decor. My name is Maria, so I am going to dupe this wooden crate with the letter M. We'll be using the new item I found in the Target dollar spot. This wooden crate was a good size, and it's really sturdy for only $3. I measured the crate and printed out the letter M at the right size. Using an X-Acto knife, I cut the large, straight edges, and then afterwards I went in and freehanded the smaller areas. I used Super 77 to glue the M to the crate, and then I took a flat-edged paintbrush and dry brushed some of those black streaks along the crate to give it that same modern farmhouse look that the Kirkland's one has. Here are the items we had to pick up for this project. Well, it was just one item since I already had the paint and the paper. And here is mine next to the Kirkland's one. I thought this was such a cute idea for a memo board. This comes in a set of 2, but we will only be making the notes version. So we'll say one is $27.50 if we cut that price in half. I'm going to upcycle this piece of decor, which I had used for another craft. You could use an embroidery hoop or even a small hula hoop from Dollar Tree. I sanded off any glue and then measured out some thick twine. We'll attach this twine with hot glue to the back. I put a dot of hot glue down first and then held one side of the twine on it, and then I finished that off with another dot of glue on top, and that sealed that twine in place. After one side dried, I could move to the other side and pull the twine really taut, and I repeated this on the other side with the dot of glue underneath and then on top. I think a staple gun would have worked really well on a wooden hoop, but I don't have a staple gun. I gave the whole thing a coat of flat black spray paint. Then I trimmed off the scraggly edges of twine with some scissors. Now for the fun part, sculpting the word notes from some wire. I'm not sure what happened, but I went to $2 or $3 Dollar Trees specifically looking for their floral wire, and they were all out. So that floral wire is in high demand right now for some reason. So I got this wire from Target, and it's a little thinner than I would have liked. The Dollar Tree one is much thicker, but it worked fine. I manipulated the wire until I got the letters just the way I wanted them, and I made sure to leave a little bit of wire at the beginning and end so I could attach this to the back of that wooden frame. I had these mini clothespins from Dollar Tree. You can see that they are about half the size of a regular clothespin. You could attach a chain if you want to copy the exact look of the Kirkland's version, or you could hang it directly on the wall without the chain. Here were the items that we used. And here is mine compared to the Kirkland's one. This hydrangea door swag is so unique and versatile. You could display these in a bowl or hang them on the wall or on a doorknob. They could work year-round because of their neutral color palette. Now $18 isn't a bad price, but let's see how much cheaper we can make these ourselves. I'm using some leftover papers I had from another project. I had gotten these gorgeous papers on a trip to Paper Source. I love that store. The gold shimmer is so pretty, and I think it'll add a little something special to this decor piece. Plus, those papers have been sitting in my craft closet, so I want to use them up. I'm sure you have some paper or wrapping paper in your closet that's been sitting there for ages, so it's always nice to find a project to use those up on. I got this wrapping paper at Dollar Tree, and they have so many pretty wrapping papers there for only $1 each. So wrapping paper is another much cheaper option than Paper Source papers. I think these were a couple dollars per sheet. You'll want to find a ball that's close to whatever color paper you end up using. Otherwise, you may have some show through in areas that didn't get 100% covered by the petals. Dollar Tree has styrofoam balls in their floral section, and in the toy section they have various plastic baseballs and ping pong balls. I found the paper stuck more quickly to the hard plastic versus the styrofoam. Making this does take a bit of time, so I would recommend going with the plastic balls to speed things up. I did this assembly line style and started by using my scalloped edge paper puncher. I love this thing and I've used it for making paper flowers in past videos. These would be so fun to make with a friend since you could work and chat while you put these together. I made these all by my lonesome, but it was still a fun and relaxing time. That's what I love about using your hands to create art. It's such a soothing activity and it gives you time away from your screen to just think. Creating art really is a form of self-care and it's so important to make that time for yourself. If you're new here, please consider subscribing if you like creative inspiration for your home. The community here on Artsy Cupcake is so uplifting and creative, so we would love to have you join for new videos every week. It's really fun getting to know you in that comment section below, so make sure to say hi. Next, I used a wooden dowel, but a pen or pencil would work well too. I'm taking those scalloped circles and wrapping them one by one around the tip of the dowel. These will end up being our petals. Then I took each petal and I put a dot of glue. It's perfect for that little flat part at the bottom, and I stuck it right onto the ball. Keep going all the way around until you have almost completed your hydrangea. Now, before you completely cover this, add the ribbon to the ball and cover any remaining spots of that ribbon with the rest of the petals. I gathered all the finished hydrangeas and let them dangle so I could decide the best arrangement and placement for the heights of the ribbons. Once I got them just right, I held them in that spot and I stitched everything together. I felt that sewing the ribbon would be way more secure than hot glue because, believe it or not, this whole arrangement is actually much heavier than you may think. I mean, it's just made out of paper and plastic, so I wasn't expecting it to be so heavy, but it is. It's a really substantial piece. I created a little bow from the same ribbon and sewed that on as well. Now for the ring at the top. I used some floral wire and wrapped some twine around it. I used a little hot glue between every 2 to 3 wraps just to secure it really well. I also added a dot of glue at the beginning and end to hold everything in place. Then I trimmed off the wire ends and I sealed this together in a ring shape. Twine always has those frizzy bits, kind of like my hair if I don't use a straightener in the morning. But I used some scissors to get rid of that on the twine, not my hair. I wrapped the excess ribbon around the ring and I secured that all together. Then I trimmed off any ribbon that I didn't use and we're done. Here were the supplies we had to pick up. And here is mine compared to the Kirkland's version. This round Home Sweet Home plaque is really cute. I love the eucalyptus leaves, and well, I know we can make this for way less than $40. I recently found this sign in the Target dollar spot. I like that it is nice and sturdy and has a little hook on the back for hanging. We will actually be making 2 DIYs with this sign today. First, we want to paint this. I'm going to try painting right over the sign. Some paints cover better than others, so depending on what you have at home, you may or may not need that primer coat. The keys to getting that faux wood look are layering different shades of browns and blacks, keeping your brush strokes going in the same general direction, but adding little inconsistencies here and there to represent the knots in the wood. I'm a full-time graphic designer, so I recreated my own version of the Kirkland sign. And I can put this up on my blog, artsycupcake.com, as a free download. So if you're interested in that, leave me a comment below and I'll try to get it up soon. I think this came out pretty close to the original. I even added the extra swooshes on the lettering. I trimmed this out with scissors. I feel you can get a smoother cut on circles with scissors versus X-Acto knives. And X-Acto knives are great for straight lines or cutting your fingers. If you saw me a couple videos back, that happened. But for cutting circles with scissors, I like to open the scissors up as much as possible and get the longest cut that I can get without stopping. I use the edge as a guide and try to stay just inside that line. Super 77 is my favorite mounting spray, so a light coat of this smoothed it down onto the wooden plaque and we are done. Here were the supplies we had to pick up for this project. If you like to craft, then you probably already have things like glue and paint and paper, so I am not counting those in this price list. Yep, so all we needed for this one was that round sign from Target. And here is the comparison. This mirror has such a neat look with those black beaded accents. Let's make a similar one for way less than $80. I found this little mirror at the dollar spot at Target and I had used it for another project. I think originally it was a natural wood color. It has a little hot glue left over from what I had done with it before, so I'm going to heat that up with a hairdryer and try to get all of that hot glue off. I'll also remove that hook on the back since we want a nice flat surface to attach this to the wooden sign. Then we'll give this edge a coat of black paint. I think that will look really nice with the black beaded accent. We're going to use that same wooden sign that we used for the last project since it's round and we already have that wood paint on there. We'll just attach that mirror to the wooden sign with some E6000 and hot glue. I painted these rounded stickers from Dollar Tree with black spray paint. Since they're stickers, they are already sticky, but I really want to make them stick on there so they won't fall off. So I secured them with a dot of glue on the back. For the edge around the outside, I think this nautical rope is a little too thick, so I'm going to see what happens if I unravel and then just use one piece of this. I'll give this some black spray paint and we'll see how it turns out. It looks like there was a little darkness around 4 of the beaded accents. So to match the Kirkland's one more closely, I went in with a detail brush and I painted just a little bit of shading around those 4 beads. Here were the supplies we had to pick up for this project. And here is mine next to the Kirkland's one. A really cute starfish sculpture going for $25. I found these wooden signs at Target and I think one of these would make a great base for our starfish. Another option would be to use some Jenga blocks from Dollar Tree and glue those together and then use wood filler and paint it. We'll also need a dowel for the starfish to attach to, and you can find those at Dollar Tree. I took some foil and squished it together, looking at the base to make sure the proportion of the starfish worked with the base that we'll be using. I worked in small sections and built up the thickness of the starfish. We want this foil to be our template for the clay, and it will help us use less clay and also help this be more lightweight instead of having the entire starfish made out of clay. Bonus is that it will dry quicker too. I added a dowel but didn't glue it in yet. This one is just to hold it up and it might get dirty while we work on the starfish. I will paint another one black and then switch them out at the end. We're using Crayola air dry clay and I got out what I thought I may need and placed it in a bowl. I also got a bowl filled with a little water. I smoothed the clay over the foil and then used water to remove any imperfections. I took a mechanical pencil for adding the divots because I could have the lead out for thinner holes or push the lead in and use the tip of the pencil for a thicker hole. I alternated as I went along to make it look natural. You want to let this dry for a couple days and then paint it. Let's work on the stand while that dries. I drilled a hole partly into that wooden sign from Target. Now I'm taking this styrofoam ball that I had. I think I had gotten it in a package around Christmas at Dollar Tree. I'm cutting this into a little ring just to make it look more like the base of the starfish. Now we'll mix up some brown and gray paint and do a couple coats on the base. I did some dry brushing with just the gray at the end to make it look more like wood. I gave the starfish a coat of white paint and then attached it to the black dowel with a little glue. Okay, let's take a look at the supplies we used. And here is the comparison of mine to the Kirkland's one. What do you guys think? Next, we'll be making one of these cute sailboats. We'll start with a piece of styrofoam and some clay tools to help us get the shape of the base of the boat. Styrofoam is so messy, but it's a really easy way to sculpt the shape that you need. I'm taking this Dollar Tree hula skirt and I removed a few pieces to wrap the styrofoam. This will give the boat a wooden texture and look. I cut the ends at different lengths so it wouldn't have such a hard edge. And then I realized I forgot to carve out the top of the sailboat, so I did that real quick. I thought some of these small thread holders would work as little cargo or barrels on the sailboat. I removed the thread from one, but I left the other with the thread to see how they would look different after painting. I used the same paint we had mixed up earlier and painted the whole base of the ship. For the sails, I measured how big I wanted them and then cut them out of foam core and attached to the dowel. I took that outside and gave it a light coat of white spray paint. When it was dry, I added some blue stripes with a Sharpie paint pen. After pushing the sails into the styrofoam, this cute coastal sailboat is done. Here were the supplies we used. These came in a set of 2 for $90, so I did cut the price in half since I only made one sailboat. Here is my next to the Kirkland's inspiration. This tray with the coral and "Life is better by the sea" quote is super cute. This one is $30, so let's see how cheap we can make our own version. This sign came from Target and it is really sturdy, so this will be the base for our tray. I used these placemats from Dollar Tree as the sides of the tray, and I trimmed them to be the right height. So I got injured here in a minute. I'm usually so good with not cutting myself, but it has happened pretty bad a couple times in my life. I wasn't sure if I would need stitches or what, but I felt like I was okay just to butterfly and wrap it with band-aids. But I did struggle my way through the rest of this craft so I could finish this video for you guys. Here we are cutting the handles into the strips with some scissors. I was missing just about ½ an inch, so I did have to piece that on the edge. The placemat isn't super stiff, but it does hold really well to the tray once it's glued down, and you can even lift the tray with the handles. I wouldn't try to lift anything heavy in there though, it's more for looks. I took this outside and gave the whole thing 2 coats of white spray paint. While that dried, I started on recreating the wording for the middle. I recolored these coral watercolors in Photoshop so that they would be the same colors as our Kirkland's inspiration piece. Then I played around with the fonts to find one I liked. I'll put this on my blog, artsycupcake.com, in case you want to download it for free. I'm really happy with how it came out, and I trimmed up the edges so when I glue it down it won't be so obvious where the edges are. This part doesn't have to be cut perfectly, you don't have to get around every single piece of coral, but just enough so it isn't a perfect circle. The last step is adding some Mod Podge to stick this down and secure our design in place. So here were the supplies we needed, and here is my version next to the Kirkland's one. Now this is almost $100, so keep watching to see how little we paid for our own version. Dollar Tree sells $1 poster board. I thought I could get a very similar look to the Pottery Barn one by manipulating this black poster board in a way to form these letters. The first thing we're doing is marking 1-inch sections on the poster board, and we're going to cut out those strips. I went with poster board instead of paper because I felt it would hold up better as a wall hanging, and it's still malleable enough to do what we need it to do to get those curves. I've had a few people ask me for tips on using an X-Acto knife. I've been using X-Acto knives since design school, so I am pretty comfortable with them by now. There are different techniques for different materials, but these are things to keep in mind when it comes to poster board and straight lines. First, always start a project with a fresh blade. So I am left-handed and I'm holding down the ruler with my right hand. I instinctively note that my fingers are out of the way of the blade before I start a cut. And I'm holding that ruler really firmly so it won't slip. I always look for rulers that have cork on the back because that really does stabilize the ruler from shifting. I also make sure the cut went all the way through the paper before moving the ruler out of position. That way, if you have to go back and make the cut deeper, you won't have to reposition the ruler again. I'm using adhesive transfer tape for this because it is really sticky and so thin and lightweight that it won't add any thickness. I've had this roll for a long time. I remember it was on my art supplies list for one of my watercolor courses, and I think we used it to attach vellum as a protective sheet between our paintings before putting them away. But I found lots of uses for this type of adhesive tape. It's especially good for working with paper, so let me show you how it works. You carefully pull out how much you'll need and then trim it with scissors. This is much more delicate than regular double stick tape. It's also much stickier. Once you get it on the surface, it's on there really good and you can peel the brown paper backing right off. You want to be really gentle as you use your fingers to curve the letters. I kept repeating the same motion to help keep the curve that I wanted on the poster board. The M is basically a series of the same piece, which is straight with that little curved part at the top. I kept going along with the letters like this until I was happy with the look. Now, I don't mind the white line on the front. I think it gives it a bit of dimension, but if that white edge bothers you, you could take a Sharpie and just color it in. For securing this to a wall, there are a couple ways you could do this. By adding tabs under the letters and then using wall mount tape. Or you could strategically place a few nails and have the tops of the letters sit right on top of the nails. Or you could attach a piece of string or fishing line with tape underneath the letters and hang it that way. Okay, let's take a look at the supplies we used. I already had the tape, and if you have double stick tape, that would work too. So all we really needed to buy for this project was the $1 piece of black poster board. And here is the comparison of mine to the Pottery Barn version. What do you guys think? I saw these steel lanterns and I really liked the simple and elegant look of them. We'll be duping the small one, and it is regularly $99. We'll be using these wooden dowels from Dollar Tree. These are different from the wooden skewers that I sometimes use on my projects. The dowels are quite a bit thicker. I used my hacksaw to cut a few pieces down. This should have been easier, but my husband used this saw for our recent Easy Closets pantry makeover. And part of that project was he had to cut metal with this saw. So the blade is really dull now. I definitely need to get a new blade this weekend. Let's give these a coat of flat black spray paint. I stuck them into a piece of styrofoam, and when they dried, I flipped them around to get the other side. I found this ceramic dish in the Target dollar spot. It was originally white, but I had used it for another project, so that's why it's gold. Now I'll be painting it with that same flat black paint that we used on the wooden dowels. I also had this glass candle. You can find similar candles at Dollar Tree, and I thought this matched the Pottery Barn one really well. Something I love about black and white decor is how it can go with any style of decor, and it just looks timeless and chic. I also like how you can mix other colors with black and white decor, and it gives it a totally different look just depending on what colors you pair it with. I love this craft mat. I use it over my wood desk, and it protects all my messy crafts from getting on that wood desk. I use Clorox wipes to get any paint off of that craft mat, and it seems to clean it up really well. Now we have our base for the candle and black painted dowels. To secure everything together, you will want to use a tight hold glue like Starbond or E6000. But if you want a quick hold too, you can use a dot of hot glue in addition to the tight hold glue. That will help you not have to hold it in place as long, because that hot glue will just kind of give it a quick hold. I pieced this together and then added a little gold and black paint mixed together for a touch of shine to this piece, which is supposed to look like metal. That shimmer really gives it that look. So here's the supply list. I don't usually count things like paint or paintbrushes or hot glue, because if you like to craft, those are probably things you already have in your craft stash. I had the candle, but if you did need to buy one, you could get it for $1 at Dollar Tree. And here is the comparison of mine to the Pottery Barn one. I thought this rustic black vase with the simple eucalyptus leaves was really elegant, but the vase is $69 and just one branch of those leaves is almost $40. So this was the only glass vase I had that would kind of work. If I had a less bulbous looking one, I probably would have used it, but we're gonna make this one work. I started by using the flat black spray paint on the outside of the vase, and it took 1 or 2 coats. Okay, the handles were a bit of trial and error, but I'll share as I go along how I would have done things a little differently. I had this really sturdy piece of styrofoam that came with a piece of wooden furniture, so it is definitely more durable than just a regular piece of styrofoam. I cut it into handle shapes. Working with styrofoam is really messy. I was worried when I spray painted these handles that the spray paint would disintegrate the styrofoam, and well, it kind of did. They lost their smooth shape a little bit, so I would stick to hand painting the styrofoam if you're going to recreate this. Another thing I would have done is used this wood filler on the handles before attaching them to the vase. I did use E6000 to stick those on. You could use wood filler or joint compound to smooth these styrofoam handles out and then paint them. Right now it's looking like a little cauldron, but once we add our texture, it really changes the look and gives it that Pottery Barn patina finish. I took some black and gold paint and added a little flour to thicken that up. Then I dabbed this onto the pot, making sure there was 3-dimensional pieces sticking out, because when it dries it does tend to smooth out a little, so you definitely want to go overboard with the paint texture here. I like how adding the texture makes it match the texture that we have on the handles too. I wanted to add the brush strokes that the Pottery Barn version had, so I used some gray chalk paint. And this chalk paint, it looks black when you first open it just because of the way the material settles in there. So I do have to stir this particular brand up and make sure it's all mixed up, and then you can see it has that nice gray look. So I did a dry brush technique by using a dry brush which has somewhat stiff bristles, and I picked up just a tiny bit of that chalk paint and dabbed it around the vase. You may want to do a little test on a piece of paper before going to the vase just to make sure you've got enough of that paint off to give it the look you want. I used a few varieties of greenery sprigs that I picked up at Dollar Tree, and I stuck those in a piece of styrofoam and placed them in at the bottom of the vase. Here were the supplies we had to pick up at Dollar Tree. And here is the comparison of mine to the Pottery Barn one. I love abstract art, and I thought this red on pink framed art was really pretty and elegant. This one from West Elm is $200, so let's see how much cheaper we can make it. I found this set of 3 canvases in the new $5 section at Dollar Tree. The largest one is almost 16 inches, so that is a decent size compared to the little 6-inch ones that Dollar Tree usually carries. These were packaged really well. Each one has individual wrapping. The canvas texture is decent, so I think this will give us a nice look on our painting. I started by taping off the edges. Then I mixed up some white and red paint and didn't fully blend them together. I left some streaks so we can get that artistic, abstract look that we're going for. I'm using a pretty small brush compared to the canvas size because I want control over those small, streaky details. I noticed there was a bit of yellow on the top left, almost like the sun is popping in over there with some fantasy landscape going on. So I added a little yellow paint and I blended that in. For the border, a Sharpie paint pen or just a regular black Sharpie will work. My paint pen started to die after one side, so I used a combo of both on mine. I placed the ruler about 1/8 of an inch inside of that tape, and I painted the black line all along those edges. Then I let this fully dry for about an hour. Now for the ultra satisfying part, removing that blue tape. If you have any spots bleeding over, don't worry about it. Just take a little bit of white paint and cover it up. Here were the supplies we had to pick up. And here is mine compared to the West Elm one. I think they look pretty similar, but let me know in the comment section what you think. These leather wrapped vases are really pretty, but they're so expensive. Even the extra small one is $85. So we're going to make these much cheaper with a material other than leather. Here's a few options. You could use faux leather. This is some leftover that we had used to recover the piano bench. I think even a paper bag would work nicely. This paper bag has a nice texture to it, which could emulate leather with some paint. But today we'll be using this placemat, which I found at Dollar Tree. The back has a really nice texture and the material is thick yet soft enough to sew through. I have this container that came with a utensil set that I got on Amazon. I just keep my utensils in a drawer, so I saved this container for a craft. I'm always saving any containers or nice packaging that I get because I like to use them for little crafts and DIYs. I measured and cut the placemat to be just big enough that there was a little overlap where the two sides meet. For the thread, we're using this thin ribbon because I want something that can easily be threaded, but also will lay flat and look similar to leather string. You'll need a thick craft needle, and after marking where you want the holes to be, we'll start sewing. I started at the bottom by creating those knots. Then I went to the top and sewed all the loops through. Then I mixed up some orange paint and gave it a coat. I really love how this is looking. Here were the supplies we had to pick up for this faux leather vase. Here is mine next to the West Elm version. Pretty good savings. I love yellow. It's such a cheerful color, and this piece could work any time of the year. This is regularly $40, but it happened to be on sale when I took this screenshot. The first thing I did was create my own version of the sign. After I was happy with how that looked, I printed it out on regular paper. I'm so embarrassed by how dusty my printer is. What is it about printers that make them collect dust so easily? I can't be the only one with this problem, right? Let me know in the comments if your printer just gathers dust for some reason. We'll be using some Super 77 to secure this to a piece of foam core that I picked up at Dollar Tree. Then we'll trim it out with an X-Acto knife. I'm using these mini Jenga blocks from Dollar Tree. I picked those up in the kids game section and we're using that as the frame. So I measured with those blocks and cut the size accordingly. Hot glue really sticks these wooden blocks down really well to the paper, so I use just a little dollop on the back and carefully put these in place. I added a piece of twine to the back with a bit of hot glue, and then I smeared a bit of hot glue over top to seal it in. Here were the supplies we picked up. And here's mine compared to the Kirkland's one. Green is my favorite color, so I'm excited to recreate this gorgeous wreath from Kirkland's. $25 is actually a pretty good price for this very full looking wreath, but we are going to challenge ourselves and try to make one that's even more substantial looking and much cheaper. Now I know the Kirkland's one said home, but we'll be making ours say love. I'd found this sign off of another sign from Dollar Tree back in February when all the Valentine's Day stuff was out. For the hoop, you could go with a hula hoop from Dollar Tree or a wooden embroidery hoop. I've got mine already painted black here, and I'm just going to tie the love sign to the hoop. We'll be covering up the string with the florals. I cut the tip off the pointy end of the love sign because it was extending just a little bit past the hoop. And then I glued this in place. A little glue underneath and on top to seal it in. I attached some twine before doing the greenery because I thought that would be easier to get this in place before we added all of the florals. I had all these eucalyptus leaves, but I know you can find similar greenery at Dollar Tree. And you would probably need around 5 or 6 branches to get the same full effect. I started by placing the greenery to create the curve on the left. You can see that these kind of make their own little bushels of greenery, so I carefully picked up those bunches and tied them together with floral wire. And then I took those and tied them to the hoop. I like to reuse my florals, so I try to just hook and loop things to the wreath forms versus using too much glue to where it might damage the florals. For the area in between those 2 large bunches, I created 2 smaller bunches and connected those in the same way. Then I went through and fluffed the florals to get a nice curve to this piece. Here were the supplies we picked up, and here is mine next to the Kirkland's one. What do you guys think? Hydrangeas are one of my favorite flowers. The blue ones look almost surreal with how bright and full they are. This wreath features those gorgeous hydrangeas, so let's make one for way cheaper than this regularly priced $90 wreath from Kirkland's. They have a couple different sizes and shapes of wreath forms over at Dollar Tree, and they have these gorgeous hydrangeas there too. You'll also want to have some greenery on hand for making this wreath to fill in anywhere that we don't use the blue hydrangeas. Can you tell I shop at Dollar Tree a lot? I really love going there for all my crafts and DIYs. I want to be able to use this wreath form and these flowers again for another project. So we're going to be using a lot of floral wire. I started by placing the hydrangeas so they were evenly spaced. There was one area I didn't have a whole branch of flowers, so I did glue those sprigs together to create a whole grouping of them. Then I filled in with some greenery. I have this lamb's ear and it's perfect for wrapping and filling in any empty spots. I don't use glue here, so this can be easily recycled on another wreath or project. Flipping your wreath over can help uncover any empty areas. And make sure to turn the wreath around as you're working. That way you'll have all the edges and sides filled up with the florals. The last step is to add a few blue daisies to any spots that look like they're needing a little bit more blue. I am going to use glue on these since I'm just adding a couple here and there, and I have very specific spots that I want them to be located. Here were the supplies we picked up at Dollar Tree. And here's mine next to the Kirkland's one. I love the look of this lavender decor, but $65 seems a little steep for some mason jars and a wooden crate. So let's see how cheap we can dupe this one. These were originally signs from Dollar Tree, and I had painted them white and used them in a previous project. I've never tried to break these apart, so let's see if it works. Okay, these came apart pretty easily, and that one edge just needs to be trimmed off. Let's see if this will be wide enough to hold 3 mason jars. Yep, perfect fit. Since we'll be painting this crate and won't even see the bottom once we put that moss in there, I'm going to very roughly glue this together. It actually did hold really well. I filled in the gaps with the glue and then smoothed it out with a piece of wood. If you are not planning on covering this with moss and jars, then you would probably want to use some sandpaper to smooth everything out before painting. We're using brown acrylic paint with a little white mixed in. I had used these mason jars for a previous craft, so I'm just going to disassemble these real quick. You can get these mason jars in the glass section at Dollar Tree. They do come with lids. I gave these a coat of taupe spray paint. While that paint dries, I'm going to work on the bows for the tops of the mason jars. I wrapped a little twine around the top and then finished off with those bows. We'll add some florals and the moss. Here were the supplies we got at Dollar Tree. Here is mine next to the Kirkland's one. Don't forget to subscribe for more home decor ideas every week. I have a whole playlist filled with dupes, so I will make sure to link that for you in case you're looking for just a little bit more inspiration. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a creative day. Bye!